Greetings. I I wanted to post a video. I'm not in the best of moods, but I'm not in the worst of moods. And I'm not talking about writing a book either, and I'm not talking about A Tale of Two Cities. So, what I would like to talk about is the interesting thing that I discovered, but not the nitty-gritty details, but just on the subject of past lives in general. And not everybody believes in past lives. You'd have to be a spiritual person to be open to the idea of past lives. It's actually true. People often think, can it be proven? And the thing is skeptics look for proof, but then they're so closed-minded that they're not able to perceive proof, even if it was shown before them. And what is reincarnation? Basically, reincarnation, as I understand it, is when you have a life and you pass away from that life, you are reborn into another body to live another life. I remember Alura Cein saying that not everybody is an incarnated soul. There are people in this world that are made from the genetic material of their mother and father. They are basically described as being brand new to the experience, but then lacking the tools to be able to navigate their reality. And I get to thinking about why reincarnation happens. And this is just a video about my perspective. I've had many lifetimes here. And the most intriguing and surprising of lifetimes that I had happened not the most recently, but fairly recently in terms of Earth's overall history. And it's got me thinking, there is something that happens to people when they experience a lot of negativity in their life. And because people around them are so programmed to just going with the way things are and not, following any higher spiritual guidance, these people that are alone and suffering will find that they become marginalized, pushed to the edge, and then become basically nothing. And I thought about a particular composer, and people, in my opinion, do not understand him very well. And they have information that they've looked into, written by people that wrote books, biographies on this person, but haven't necessarily really, gotten the straight, unadulterated truth. And there's something to that. And it's something that became very apparent to me, that when people write something about somebody, they're not doing it from like a pure place. They're doing it because they want to make a lot of money by saying, oh yeah, I know so and so, and I'm around him all the time, and I do this and I do that, and oh, he said this. And I get to thinking to myself, I'm like, just how many lies do people believe in this world about other people just because somebody makes a claim that they know somebody, and then they just embellish or they make up lies about this person. And I want to get to a thing called karma. Karma brings people back to the lessons that they've tried to skip, that they missed, that they don't think about. Actions have consequence. They're either going to be positive consequences or they're going to be negative consequences. You cannot just do something or think something and then think that it's not going to have any consequence. Everything has a consequence. But it's not all weighed the same. Every action is not weighed the same. It's not judged the same by the divine powers that be. Consequences are what traps people in endless cycles. And in Buddhism, they call that Samsara, where it's just a constant recycling over and over. And that creates suffering because, as Alura said in her video, The Deadly Sins, when you have unfinished business, that becomes an anchor. That unfulfillment, the lack of fulfillment, leads to depression, leads to certain kinds of ideations that are toxic to oneself, leads to harmful habits, leads people to seek things out that are not good for them. And that's because people in this world have so much unfinished business. So many things that they could have experienced, but they were held back from it. So many things that they should have been able to get out of the way, but they were distracted from it. And this world is full of distractions. And there is a great teacher that's talked about how to get out of the cycles. He's talked about how to stop suffering. He's talked about how to be loving. He's talked about many different things. But it seemed like people just have not had the chance to really break free from the mind control, from the control mechanisms that keep them stuck here. And the chakra system comes into play because that's how you get stuck. If your energies are not vibrating at the right frequencies, you're going to be apt to not function in a healthy way. That's like trying to run a car with an oil change that's past due to the point where it's sludgy. You just destroy the motor. You burn it out. You can't do that to a body. You can't just let the chakras be out of whack. You can't just eat whatever you want and think there's no consequences. You can't just do whatever you want and think that there's no consequences. But the thing is, people that are suffering, people that are depressed, people that are diagnosed bipolar or any other mental illness that seems just debilitating and it's always going to be a struggle. People do things to try to escape that pain, to find a little bit of comfort, even if it hurts themselves, even if it's, leading them down the wrong way, because they're not digging deep and drawing strength to push through and to transcend. Sometimes people just don't know how to get over something. They don't know how to rise above it. And what causes suffering is ego. And ego is rooted in negativity, debauchery, gambling, addiction, infidelity, adultery, wrath, jealousy, envy, sloth, everything. Depression is even a sin because it dims the light. Negativity dims the light. And Alura said that in her video. Negativity is like a damper. You don't put a light, on the stand. You don't put a lampstand on the top of the hill and then put a cover over it. you let it shine. You don't use ego. Don't let negativity cloud your thinking, cloud your emotions. Don't let it distract you from things that are supposed to matter in your life and to your human journey. But people let things distract them all the time. And I think it's important that people open their minds up to different perspectives, because all this isolation only drives people apart. And when people are isolated, that is when they're the most vulnerable. And I've come to realize that there was a life I had where I thought to myself, recently, I don't know how long ago, where I thought, what if my ability to remember things is the result of me not wanting to remember something that was so very damaging emotionally, mentally, spiritually? Like, what if there was something I went through that I didn't want to remember? So it impacted everything else, because I have a hard time remembering things at times. So I keep a notebook with me to just write it down so I have it on hand. But there was something that I noticed that the Lord does for me. He'll show me a person. This is just something that worked for me. He showed me a man named Asher Uvalet. Okay, I figured him out and what his hangups were and how that impacted me, because that was me in another life. So he showed me another man, and this man was utterly defeated, broken. Just, you felt bad for him because it looked like he was dead inside. Like, he didn't make any eye contact. He stared off into the distance. His arms hung down by his side. It was like there was nobody home. And this man I saw walked up to me probably last year, 2024. And I didn't understand what it meant, because I wasn't yet ready to deal with the truth of what the consequences of my actions were. Even though I could have chosen differently, but I know myself enough to know that I am who I am, and I don't put a mask on. But that's why I faced hardship. I was genuine. I was always just myself. And that made people angry. That upset people. That made people get mean. That made people reject me. That made people, say hurtful things or treat me like I'm beneath them. And it pushed me into a place of isolation, because when I did try to be, less myself and more of what made them feel comfortable, I only learned the hard truth that people of that kind of disposition were superficial. They didn't care about what was in their soul. They were so at the surface level of things because they followed what society dictated to them. They stayed to their social class, their economic status, their gender roles, their job roles, their titles, their merits. Society and religion, government defined everything for them, and nobody thought to look deeper. And it was frustrating to realize that people would use someone for their own gains, even if it destroyed the other person in the process. And that was bewildering. And it drove me to behave in ways that I would not have behaved otherwise. I felt rejected. I felt lowly, hated, despised. I felt like people treated me like I was a freak, a beast. They always said mean things about me, about my temperament, about the way I smelled, about the way I stood there, the way I laughed, the way I smiled, the lack of smiling. my obsessions, my habits. Everything was something to be entertained by, to make a mockery of. The word escaped me, but that's how I can describe it. There is a word that would describe that, like I was just like a novelty item where I existed in some sort of fictional story, and then I was like the character based off the character in the story that people read about and had a good laugh about, and then thought, oh man, what a poor person. Like, hate be that guy. And it just made me realize that it led me away from truly wanting to be myself. I didn't remember anything from what I learned the last time when I went wandering off. Vanity under the sun and a chasing of the wind. I didn't have that knowledge with me. But I knew knowledge was something that brought people closer to the divine. I knew that music could help people get closer. I knew that art had a way of elevating the consciousness of people. Like, there were things that I knew, but I haven't been able to tap into them. And it's because of negativity and the cycles of karma that cause us to reincarnate over and over again. It creates blockages and barriers. But that's why God is important, because he can open doors that we cannot open. If you just sat there and meditated and actually asked him for help and not, have these, doubts and blockages about everything, just saying, hey, I need help and I'm surrendering myself to you. The truth is revealed, but it's never anything that's going to destroy you. It comes up little at a time. There is a way to get out of suffering, but so many people are distracted by this world. They're distracted by politics, distracted by religion, distracted by race, gender idea. These different labels, stereotypes. People are blind and they're just walking in circles. I'll say something to somebody and then they tell me that I'm wrong. And then they'll tell me what it is. And I'm like, really? But as Proverbs said, the Proverb said that you can't, debate with a fool because he would think himself wise. So that conversation had to be dropped. And there's a reason why everything led up to this point in my life. I do have something that I want to do, and I want to do more of it for this channel. I want to get back into music because there is a purpose. And it's based on a life that I remembered. It's a life that was omitted completely from my Akashic record that I got from Alura Cein. It was not mentioned, it was not alluded to, not until after I dealt with my issues that I had as Ashur Ubalet II. Because I had a lot of issues being that person, because there was a lot of stuff that happened in that life that made me feel really heavy and guilty, and I was not a bad person. I had a good heart, but I had issues. And I get to thinking about this life that was revealed to me, and I thought to myself, what a remarkable human being. If people were just able to look at him without judgment, without being distracted by appearances, to just look into his eyes, to really look at the soul that drives the brain. He just needed love. There was so much about him that could be positive. There was so much about him that just needed healing. But people don't think of that. But as they say, in artistic circles and otherwise, suffering really elevates the art. Apparently, you have to suffer for your art, but in discovering the truth about why people that suffer extreme hardships turn away from God, it made me realize it's because they believed that what they were told was true about their worth, about the way this world works, about how religion determines things, how government determines things, and they were taught lies, and that destroyed their hope. Because according to their lies, people that are suffering, they won't get justice, they won't have, you know, they won't have any spiritual blessings. They just have to suck it up and deal with it. Because some people are just meant for it. That they're just meant to suffer, and they're meant to just go through hardship because somehow God chooses, the toughest battles for his soldiers. Like, oh, you're going through hardship because somehow God chose that for you. And they would straight up lie to your face and say, oh, well, you're terminally ill. Oh, God must have chose that for you. The Heavenly Father doesn't choose to make people suffer. And that's a lie that's been perpetuated for ages, that existing as a human being was supposed to be full of suffering. That is a lie. And I hope to be able to get deeper into this past life of mine, because I thought if I could bring back the musical prowess to a big degree, then I could make music. And this music could be healing. This music could set people free in some way, because wherever this world is going, it's going to be crap. And I thought to myself, the guy that turned his back on God, not realizing how beloved he was, not realizing, God made a promise to him. He was not as bad as people say. Because heaven showed me why he was the way he was. And it was people who wanted to chase after vanity and ego, and they made him feel like he was an outcast in society. And I know he tried to fit in, and that was something that he shouldn't have done, but he forgot that lesson from a different life. So I'm hoping. I'm trying to keep who he was a secret to myself. But I did let a handful of people know, only those in Alura's closest circle. Because they're not going to go and take advantage of it and, make a profit off of it. They're not going to do things for their own self-glory. And the point here is to elevate ourselves in a positive way as to get closer to God. It's not for vainglory. The glory of God should be the only thing that we're striving for, because his love will flow through us, and by the Holy Spirit we become better people for others because of our surrendering to him. And the world could heal. There will be a time where people wake up to the truth, but people have to endure to the end so that they don't lose out on the freedom that truth brings. And that's it. Just with love and light, which is the same thing as love. That's the video. People could leave the cycles of suffering if they just returned to the light and accepted the truth, held on, endured, and not let the negativity of this world defeat them. Peace will be here soon, but not as soon as people will push for. Everything has to be ready. Yeah.